The paper lies are no longer holding their shape under the pressure of 2026's physical reality. You've heard the whispers of a liquidity tsunami, but while the world sleeps, the banking cartel is performing a desperate surgical strike on the very foundation of ownership. We have reached the end of the map. Beyond this point, the paper lies vanish entirely, and only the physical truth remains to light the way. Welcome to the final briefing. Welcome to the 3 a.m. default. While you're sleeping, while the city lights flicker in the dead of the night and the rest of the world is lost in the cycle of rest, a silent war is being waged on the LED screens of the global banking architecture. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, the hour of the wolf, and the physical truth has finally come for its pound of flesh. Inside the glass towers of the banking cartel, there is no sleep tonight. There is only the frantic tapping of keys and the cold, clinical activation of force majeure protocols. They are calling it a technical adjustment, but we know its true name. This is the 3 a.m. default. Imagine for a moment that you own a title to a home. You have the deed, you have the keys, and you have the promise of the law. But at 3 in the morning, the bank sends a courier to your door, takes your keys, and leaves a stack of rapidly devaluing paper on your porch, telling you the house no longer exists for you. That is exactly what is happening in the silver markets right now. As we stand here in January 2026, the COMEX registered inventory, the actual metal available for delivery, has not just dropped. It has plummeted by over 60% in a matter of weeks. The obtainium is gone. The vaults are echoing with the sound of empty air. And yet, on the digital tickers, the price of silver is being suppressed by a wall of paper promises. But here is the physical truth they don't want you to see. For every single ounce of real physical silver sitting in those vaults, there are now nearly 400 paper claims floating in the digital void. For every 400 people who think they own a bar of silver, only one of them is actually holding reality. The other 399 are holding a ghost. Why 3 a.m.? Because that is the red zone. It is the moment of lowest liquidity, the gap between the closing of the Western markets and the opening of the East. It is the only time the cartel can move without triggering a total market meltdown. They are triggering cash settlement clauses in the dark of night. If you are an institutional buyer, and you asked for your silver to be delivered this month, the bank didn't send you a truck filled with metal. They sent you a digital wire of currency and told you that the metal is unavailable for delivery. In December alone, 95% of all silver delivery requests were settled in paper currency. They are bribing the holders of the metal to stay away from the vaults, because if even 5% of those holders demanded the physical truth at the same time, the entire global banking system would shatter like glass on a concrete floor. This isn't the first time the architects of the behavioral sink have pulled this trick. History is a mirror, and if you look closely, you can see the reflection of the panic of 1907. Back then, the great trusts of New York had overextended themselves, betting wealth that didn't exist. When the liquidity tsunami hit, the actual currency vanished. The banks didn't have the gold, they didn't even have the paper. What did they do? The New York Clearinghouse suspended cash payments entirely. They issued scrip, worthless pieces of paper that they promised would be worth something later. They froze the exits and told the public it was for their own protection. Today, in 2026, the scrip is the digital cash settlement they are forcing into your account at 3 a.m. They are protecting the cartel by sacrificing your future. The physical truth is a heavy burden, and the banking cartel is about to be crushed by its weight. While the average person stares at a digital ticker, thinking they understand the value of their wealth, they are actually staring at the shadow of a ghost. The ghosts of 1907 aren't just haunting the history books. They are walking the floors of the central banks right now, watching the paper lies they spent a century perfecting finally catch fire. The exit doors are narrowing. The obtainium is being hoarded by those who know what's coming, while the rest are being fed a diet of digital promises at 3 in the morning. The question isn't whether the system will default. The question is, when the sun rises and the paper has been burned away, what will you be holding in your hands? The paper lies were built on the assumption that the world would always be willing to trade its physical truth for a digital promise. But in 2026, the world has stopped trading. The obtainium has dried up, and the banking cartel is realizing that you cannot eat, build, or fight a war with a digital ledger when the vaults are screaming empty. To understand why the banks are panicking at 3 a.m., you have to look east. The liquidity tsunami isn't just a wave of failing currency. It is a vacuum created by the sudden disappearance of the world's silver supply. China, the sleeping giant that once fed the global industrial machine, has finally closed its borders. In January 2026, the Shanghai Gold Exchange didn't just limit exports, they triggered a total blackout. They have realized that in a world of paper lies, the one who holds the metal holds the power. For decades, the West relied on a steady flow of obtainium from the East to keep the behavioral sink from collapsing. We used that silver for everything from the solar panels on our roofs to the guidance systems in our missiles. But now, that flow has been cut. The export bans are terminal. China is no longer selling its future for a handful of Western debt. They are hoarding every ounce, every gram, every atom of physical silver, leaving the LBMA and the COMEX to starve in the dark. And it's not just the East. Look at the red zone in South America. The supply routes we once took for granted are now battlegrounds. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have turned the Caribbean into a no-go zone for unprotected cargo. Peru, once the backbone of global silver production, is paralyzed. The supply chain snap we warned about isn't a theory anymore. It is the daily reality for every refiner from Zurich to Singapore. Let's look at the physical truth of the numbers without the comfort of a spreadsheet. For every single bar of real physical silver that is actually available for purchase on the open market today, there are over 400 digital ghosts haunting the exchanges. Think about that. If a room of 400 people all believe they own the same single chair, 399 of them are going to end up sitting on the floor. The banking cartel knows this. They see the terminal deficit being reported by the Silver Institute. They see the red zone spreading across the map. They know that the obtainium is vanishing into private vaults and sovereign reserves, never to return to the paper market. This is why they are cannibalizing the local dealers. This is why the LBMA is sending gray suits to small-town coin shops, and local bullion dealers offering premiums that seem too good to be true just to get their hands on a few thousand ounces of physical metal to plug the holes in their failing system. They are desperate. They are trying to fight a forest fire with a water pistol. Historically, this is the silver crisis of 1873 all over again, the crime of 73. Back then, the elite moved to demonetize silver, stripping the common man of his physical truth to force him into a gold standard system they controlled. They manipulated the law to make the metal vanish from the economy. Today, they aren't using the law, they are using the 3 a.m. default. They are letting the obtainium disappear from the grid while they tell you that the digital price is the only one that matters. But you can't build a 2026 economy on a paper lie when the physical silver is being hoarded by your rivals. The China blackout was the first domino. The red zone disruptions were the second. Now the vacuum is so strong it's sucking the very foundation out from under the global banks. They are running out of places to hide. They are running out of people to lie to. And most importantly, they are running out of metal. The physical truth is that the age of easy obtainium is over. The liquidity tsunami is here, and it's carrying the weight of 400 paper promises for every single bar of silver left in the world. When the tide goes out, we're going to see who was holding the metal and who was holding the wind. The behavioral sink is no longer a concept confined to laboratory experiments on overcrowded rats. It has become the living, breathing reality of the global financial hubs. In the mid-20th century, researchers found that when a population is trapped in an enclosed space with limited resources, the social fabric doesn't just fray, it undergoes a total pathological collapse. Mothers abandon their young, the strong cannibalize the weak, and the entire colony enters a terminal spiral. Welcome to the COMEX and the LBMA in January 2026. We are witnessing the financial version of the behavioral sink, where the banking cartel, trapped in a vault with no obtainium and 400 paper claims for every single bar of silver, has turned on its own participants. The mechanism of this collapse is the 3 a.m. ledger. To the outside world, the price of silver looks like a neat, fluctuating line on a screen. But behind that line is a desperate, clandestine protocol designed to keep the physical truth from ever reaching the light of day. When a large institutional buyer, a manufacturer of solar panels or a sovereign wealth fund, steps up to the window and demands the physical metal they've paid for, the bank doesn't open the vault. Instead, they open the 3 a.m. ledger. This is the hour of the ghost settlement. Between the hours of 2 and 4 in the morning, when the Western world is paralyzed by sleep and the Asian markets are just beginning to stir, the clearinghouses initiate what they call administrative reconciliation. In plain English, they are forcing a default. In December 2025, a staggering 95% of all silver delivery requests were settled in cash. This isn't a choice, it's a shakedown. The banks are using a combination of bribes and blades. They offer the buyer a premium in lieu of metal, a cash payout that might be 5 or 10% above the manipulated spot price, on the condition that the buyer walks away and never speaks of the empty vault. But what if the buyer refuses the bribe? What if they actually need the silver for their factory lines? That's when the blade comes out. The banks trigger Rule 589, or its equivalent, emergency cash settlement clauses. They declare a geographic supply bottleneck or a systemic liquidity event, giving them the legal right to cancel the physical contract and force the buyer to accept paper currency. They are effectively telling the world, we have your money, we have your contract, but we are keeping the metal. Take the paper or take nothing. This is why the 3 a.m. window is the red zone for the banking cartel. It is the only time they can perform these surgical defaults without causing a public panic. If these settlements happened at noon, the liquidity tsunami would be instantaneous. By doing it at 3 a.m., they can reset the books, clear the delivery backlog with digital ink, and present a clean sheet to the markets when the sun rises. But you cannot build a solar panel with a digital settlement. You cannot manufacture a semiconductor with a premium in lieu of metal. The physical truth is that the gap between the paper price in London and the physical price in Shanghai has become a canyon. While the paper lies tell you silver is $75 an ounce, the physical reality in the East is already screaming past 110. The cartel is now in the terminal stage of the behavioral sink. They are cannibalizing their own reputation, destroying the very trust that the global exchange system was built upon, just to survive one more night. They are betting that you won't wake up. They are betting that as long as the digital ticker keeps moving, you won't notice that the obtainium has been replaced by a ghost settlement. In the history of the world, no paper promise has ever survived a collision with a physical shortage. The banks are trying to paper over a hole in reality that is now too large to hide. They are settling in cash because they have run out of lies and they have run out of metal. The 3 a.m. default is the sound of the trap snapping shut. In April of 1933, the American people woke up to a world where their physical truth, the gold in their pockets and the bars in their safes, had been declared a crime. Under the stroke of a pen known as Executive Order 6102, the banking cartel used the government as its enforcement arm to strip the public of their real wealth, replacing it with paper promises that could be devalued at will. Fast forward to January 2026. The paper lies are failing again, but the cartel has learned from the past. They don't need to send agents to your door to seize your metal if they can simply seize your right to it while you sleep. The 3 a.m. default we are witnessing today is the digital reincarnation of 1933. It is a silent, automated confiscation of the future. The physical truth is that the banks are currently operating under a digital executive order. While they haven't outlawed the ownership of silver, they have effectively outlawed the delivery of it. By forcing cash settlements at the 3 a.m. hour, they are committing a crime of value substitution. They are taking your claim on a rare, indestructible industrial necessity and giving you back a digital entry in a ledger that they control, a ledger that is being drowned in a liquidity tsunami of new currency. Think about the betrayal of 1933. Back then, they told you it was for the stability of the nation. They told you that by surrendering your gold at $20.67 an ounce, you were being a patriot. Then, the moment the metal was safely in the vaults of the elite, they revalued that gold to $35, effectively stealing 40% of the public's purchasing power overnight. Today, the heist is even more sophisticated. By forcing you to accept cash instead of silver at 3 a.m., the banks are trapping you in a devaluation corridor. They pay you the paper price today, knowing full well that by the time you try to use that cash to buy physical obtainium on the open market, the price will have gapped up by 20, 30, or 50%. They are paying you in the currency of the past to settle a debt of the future. This is the behavioral sink in its final predatory form. The architects of the system know that the terminal deficit of silver in 2026 is irreversible. They know that with China's export ban and the red zone supply chain snaps, there is no more metal coming to save them. So, like the trusts of 1907 and the politicians of 1933, they are changing the rules of the game in the middle of the night. We are seeing the birth of a two-tier reality. On one side, you have the paper zone, where the average investor is kept happy with digital numbers and 3 a.m. cash settlements. On the other side, you have the physical zone, where the banking cartel, central banks, and industrial giants are quietly hoarding every ounce of obtainium they can get their hands on. They are using the cash they force on you to buy the very metal they told you was unavailable. The ghost of 1933 is walking the halls of the LBMA right now. It is whispering that the physical truth is too valuable for the masses to hold. It is telling the cartel that as long as they can keep the public focused on the digital ticker, they can finish the great wealth transfer in the shadows. But there is one major difference between 1933 and 2026. In 1933, the world was moving toward more centralization. In 2026, the liquidity tsunami is tearing that centralization apart. The paper lies are losing their power because the rest of the world, the East, the red zone nations, and the wise individuals, have already stopped believing. The 3 a.m. default is not a sign of strength. It is the final desperate gasp of a regime that has run out of metal to steal. When you accept a cash settlement at 3 a.m., you aren't being paid out. You are being locked out. You are being handed a ticket to a sinking ship while the cartel scrambles for the last few lifeboats made of solid silver. The physical truth doesn't care about your digital balance. It only cares about what you can hold when the sun finally rises on the paper crematorium. The paper lies were designed to be an infinite loop, a cycle of debt and digital promises that would never have to meet the cold, hard surface of reality. But the 3 a.m. default has broken the circuit. As the liquidity tsunami of 2026 gathers height, we are moving past the era of manipulation and into the paper crematorium, the moment where every contract not backed by physical truth is reduced to ash. Welcome to the final extraction. We have spent this briefing tracking the footprints of the banking cartel through the shadows of the red zone and the silence of the 3 a.m. ledger. We have seen how the China export blackout and the supply chain snap in the Americas have turned silver into the ultimate obtainium, a substance so rare and so vital that the powers that be are willing to commit systemic fraud just to keep you from holding it. The mystery we opened at the beginning of this transmission is now solved. Why are the banks settling in cash while you sleep? Because they are out of time, out of metal, and out of luck. They are using the 3 a.m. window to perform a mass liquidation of your future, paying you in a currency that is losing its value faster than the ink can dry on the ledger. They are hoping that by the time you wake up and realize the physical truth, the doors to the vault will be welded shut. History tells us how this ends. We've seen it in the fall of Rome, where the emperors shaved the edges of their silver denarius until the coins were nothing but copper washed in a paper lie. We saw it in 1913, when the architects of the Federal Reserve built a system designed to slowly siphon the physical truth out of the hands of the people. And we see it now in January 2026, as the LBMA and COMEX face a terminal deficit that no amount of digital printing can fill. The behavioral sink is reaching its conclusion. The cartel is no longer trying to manage the market. They are trying to survive the collapse. They are cannibalizing the last of the physical inventories, stripping the local dealers bare and engaging in cash in lieu of delivery, because they know that in a world of solar-powered grids, AI-driven warfare, and high-tech medical breakthroughs, silver is the only currency that cannot be faked. The physical truth is that there is no recovery coming for the paper markets. There is only the extraction of value from those who believe the screen and the protection of wealth for those who hold the metal. For every 400 people standing in line for their paper settlement, there is only one bar of silver. The math of the paper lies has finally run into the wall of physical reality. So, how do you survive the paper crematorium? You exit the digital loop. You recognize the 3 a.m. default not as a market glitch, but as a flare in the night, a signal that the exits are closing. You stop trading ghosts and start acquiring obtainium. You move your wealth into the physical zone before the liquidity tsunami makes the price of silver irrelevant, because when the system finally snaps, there will be no price. There will only be those who have it and those who don't. The banking cartel is betting that you will stay asleep. They are betting that the behavioral sink has made you too passive, too distracted, and too trusting to see the theft happening in the dead of night. They are wrong. You have seen the physical truth. You have heard the 3 a.m. call from the abyss. The sun is rising on a new world, a world where the paper lies have burned away, and only the metal remains to light the way. The extraction has begun. Make sure you aren't the one left holding the ashes. This has been your final briefing. The physical truth is in your hands now. Stay vigilant. Stay physical.